Hey guys, welcome back. So, I figured since my last couple of videos have been quite the hit, they are the most viewed videos on my channel, so really appreciate that. They also struck up some controversy, particularly with my tier list ranking of the last selection of presidents, um, claiming that there's some bias in there, and yes, obviously there is some bias in a tier list, of course. It's also an objective or subjective opinion um, according to how I feel they did as president. So few people got a little angry at me, but what can you do? So I figured we'd try to do something a little bit more tamer here today. And I've decided that I'm going to do my own little house prediction. We have a house election coming up in 2026. Pretty likely that the Democrats are going to regain control of the House. The governor races and the Senate races are an entirely different story, but I think the House race is possibly the safest for Democrats. So we're going to be doing that today. Um, there's a few states that are being redistricted, like Utah, Ohio, I believe. So we'll take a little bit more time talking about them. There are some that I'm just going to quickly go over because I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and a lot of some of these seats also I do not believe are up for re-election, but we'll get to them when we get there. So without any further ado, let's get started. First up is Alaska. So Nick Begich only won by a fairly slim amount in Alaska when Trump overperformed in by 13.1%. I think if Mary Patola were to run in this race, I don't think she will, but if she were to run, I think Alaska would be maybe a lean or tilt red, but for now I'm going to put Alaska as a likely red. Moving on to Arizona, Eli Crane is more than likely going to win the second district here, with David Schweikart also likely winning Arizona's first district. The sixth, though, is a bit of a different story. Juan Ciscomani barely won, again by a 2.5%, a very slim margin. This is also a district that Trump barely won by 0.7% here. So I actually am going to um, uh, count District 6 as a tilt Democratic district here, just given that the party out of power tends to do a little bit better than the challenging party. It's possibly going to be some form of blue wave. So I'm going to put District 6 as a tilt for the Democrats here. Then we have California, which has a few districts here. So Kevin Kiley in California 3, I think he's still likely going to win the district, even though it is a bluer year. Josh Harder has been serving District 9 for a while now. I think this is going to be a likely victory for him. Adam Gray, I believe, in District 13 is probably going to still win it by a slim margin here. 0.1%. I think he can possibly build that up to a tilt or lean margin, but for now I'm going to put it as lean. Jim Costa is likely going to win the 21st district here. The 22nd, probably going to drop down to a lean for Republicans here. And then if we get a closer look at Los Angeles here, so the 27th, George Whitesides was actually a fairly good candidate for them to run. They've been running someone in the 27th who consistently loses to the Republican. They finally picked someone else. I think the 27th is likely going to go to the Democrats. 41st, Ken Calvert's been serving there for a long time. Likely going to go to the Republicans. Young Kim won this district by a fairly decent margin. I think it's still probably going to be likely for the Republicans. Mike Levin is probably going to likely win in the 49th, the 47th. Let's take a look at the 47th real quick. David Min won by a pretty slim margin, but given that it's a bluer year, I'd probably still classify it as lean. And finally, the 45th, I think is probably going to be a likely for Derek Tran to win re-election here. So that's California. Moving on to Colorado, we have a couple districts here. So District 3 with Jeff Hurd won by an okay margin. Just given that this district tends to be Republican, I'm probably going to make this a lean red. And then District 8's kind of different. Gabe Evans won this only by 0.7%, and Trump only won by 1.8% in this district. I think District 8 is going to actually be a flip for the Democrats here. Getting ever so closer to 218. I think I didn't mention this. 218 is the necessary number to gain a majority in the House. So keep an eye on these scores as we keep going. We have Connecticut, I believe. Not sure if this seat is up for re-election, but let's just take a look. Johanna Hayes won it by a fairly comfortable margin. If it's a bluer year, it's going to probably be likely for the Democrats here. Down to Florida, which is actually kind of a different story. Florida is one of the most right-leaning states as of now. It's trending hard and harder to the right. So we have the 13th with Anna Luna, won by a fairly decent margin. I'm probably still going to classify it as likely for the Republicans. We go down to Miami here for Jared Moskowitz. I'm actually probably going to classify this as either a tilt or a lean. I'll make it a lean, but this seat is in some pretty deep water, especially just given the current political climate of Florida. It's possible that the Republicans can flip the seat, but for now I'm going to have it as tilt. Going down to Illinois, I'm not sure if this seat is up for re-election. We have Eric Sorensen, who won by a fairly decent margin up here. I'm probably going to do likely for the 17th. Again, some of these aren't really self-explanatory. And same thing for Indiana. This first district's also going to be a likely. Going down to Iowa, we have a couple seats up for re-election here. Zach Noon in Iowa's third. Won it by a fairly okay margin. I think it's probably going to drop down to a tilt red, just given the current climate of Iowa. The first here, Meeks won it by a very, very slim margin. I think this is a seat that the Democrats can possibly tilt or flip here. So that's for Iowa. Going down to Maine, so Jared Golden, fairly popular candidate. I'm not sure if he's going to be running for this seat again. If he does, I think he could possibly win it by a lean margin. He won it by a very slim margin, managed to flip the district. I'm going to put it as a lean for the Democrats as of now, but it all depends on if Jared Golden runs. Just because Maine's second tends to be very Republican, just given that they split the vote. Let's see here. Michigan, there's a few seats here. So starting with the third and fourth, Scholten won it by, again, almost double digits here. So I'm probably put the third, as a likely. Fourth, I think Abil Huizenga is probably in a fairly safe margin. It might drop down to a likely. I'm going to classify the fourth as a likely for him here. We have the 7th and 8th district with Tom Barrett winning by a fairly small margin. I think that might be able to drop, but I don't see Republicans or Democrats flipping it. Probably a lean margin here. With the 8th by Rivet winning by a fairly decent margin, probably going to boost that score even more in this coming 2026 election. And then we have the 10th with John James, again winning it by an okay margin, probably going to drop down to a lean. I don't see Democrats flipping this seat. And next up is Montana, which I think is going to be likely for the Republicans. It's Montana, no really explanation necessary. We have the Omaha district, second district in Nebraska here. Don Bacon's consistently been underestimated. I mean, he only won it by a very small margin, but I'm going to probably put it as tilt, just because Don Bacon tends to actually do a lot better than people predict him to do. So I'm going to classify it as tilt. Possibly it could flip. Moving to Nevada. So the first, Titus won by a comfortable margin. Bluer year, again, probably going to go up to a likely here. The third, I believe, is being gerrymandered into a Trump district, but I think Susie Lee might still have a fairly decent chance here. But I'm probably going to drop it to a tilt, or not tilt, lean. And then the fourth with Horsford, fairly decent margin again, so I'm going to classify the fourth as likely. Moving up to New Hampshire, we have both of their districts up for re-election. With Chris in the first district, he's been serving since 2019. I think he's probably more than likely got the first district under here. And then Goodlander, first term, it's possible that she could be flipped, but again, she won it by a fairly decent margin. Even though New Hampshire tends to be a lot more competitive than some of these other uh, New England states, I'm still going to probably give it to Goodlander here by a likely margin, given that it's a bluer year. Moving up to New Jersey, Tom Keene in the 7th district won it by an okay margin, probably going to drop it down to a lean here. We have the 5th and the 9th as well. I don't think Josh Gottheimer is in a really dangerous position. He's probably going to win it by a likely margin. Here in the 5th, and then Menendez, I think, is probably in a similar position here in the 9th. Going on down to New Mexico, which is pretty consistently a safe state for Democrats in terms of the House. Gabriel Vasquez, I think, is also in a fairly okay position. Probably going to win it by a lean margin here. His chances might increase even more, but that's just what the stats are saying right now. In New York, we have some seats up here. So the 22nd with Manion won it by almost double digits, probably going to make this a likely Democratic seat. The 19th with Josh Riley, he pretty much runs this district, although he won it by a very small margin. The 19th is probably going to lean for the Democrats here. 18th with Pat Ryan, fairly comfortable margin for the last election, likely seat here. Michael Lawler in the 17th won by a fairly decent margin. I'm going to drop it down to a lean, just basing it off the bluer year, but I think this is a seat that Republicans hold. And then the 4th and the 3rd and the 4th here are actually kind of Swozey and Gillen are kind of in dangerous spots here. There's potential for the Republicans to flip these seats. I'm going to put them as lean Democrat for now. We have North Carolina with one seat here. Don Davis, 1.7%, although this is a district that the president won by 3.1%, so overperformed in that aspect. Just given the current trend of North Carolina, how it's kind of shifting to the right, I'm probably going to drop this down to a tilt. We have Ohio, which is seeing some redistricting. So with the first, we have Greg Landsman, which I don't think he's in really any particular danger. He's probably going to boost his percentage here in the next election. I'm going to do likely. The 9th is being gerrymandered into a more Trump or Republican district. Marcy Couture has been winning for years now, since 1983, as you can see. But just given that she's older and that it's being redistricted for a Republican for the Republicans, probably going to tilt it for the Republicans. They will probably manage to flip this seat. Amelia Sykes also in some danger here. She won it by a fairly small margin. Just given how Ohio's kind of just slowly moving in favor of the Republicans, I'm also probably going to drop this down to a tilt for Democrats here. We have Oregon, and I think Bynum might be in some trouble here, but just given the leftward leaning politics of Oregon, probably going to be a lean district here. We have Pennsylvania. So Chris Deluzio in the 17th won it by a fairly decent margin, 7.8%, overperformed the vice president by a couple percentage points. I think the 17th is probably going to be a likely district for Democrats. The 10th with Scott Perry. Scott Perry's been serving there for a long time. Also, Pennsylvania is shifting to the right. I don't see this district doing anything different. Brian Fitzpatrick, kind of similar situation here. Ryan McKenzie in Pennsylvania's 7th. It's a very small margin, but again, just seeing how Pennsylvania is trending, I'm actually going to keep this as tilt for the Republicans. And then Pennsylvania's 8th district, again, won it by a fairly small margin, but again, just given Pennsylvania's trend, probably going to be lean here. And then let's see, we have Texas with a few districts here. The 28th, I think, is going to be pretty solid for Henry here. Going to make it a likely district. Monica de la Cruz in the 15th is going to probably also be likely. Oh, not the 28th there. And then the 34th with Vincent Gonzalez, and serving there a while, probably going to be a likely district for the Democrats. Utah is going to see some redistricting, so they're probably going to make the 4th into a Salt Lake City district, which is going to, I believe, probably lean towards the Democrats, so the Democrats will get a foothold here in Utah. Virginia, we have a few seats up for re-election. So Virginia's 10th, won by a fairly okay margin, probably going to increase, but I'm going to currently put it as lean. And then Virginia's 7th, fairly small margin there, probably going to be lean, I'd argue. Rob Whitman has been serving the 1st for a long time, probably still going to be likely. And then Jen Kiggins in the 2nd. It's possible that the Democrats could flip it, but I'm going to give it to her by a tilt margin. Then we have Washington here. Marie Perez, I think, in Washington Thirds is in no real trouble. It's going to be a likely district for Democrats. And then Kim Schreier, again, serving in the 8th district for a while now, also probably going to be a likely district for the Democrats. And as you can see, that gives them their 218 necessary majority here. We still have a couple states to classify. So let's keep going with Wyoming or Wisconsin. So we have a couple districts up for re-election here. We have the 1st with Brian Steele. I think is probably going to win it by a lean margin, but he's been serving there for a long time. And then Derek Van Orden. This is a interesting district. He barely won it, only by 2.7%, underperformed the president here. I think Democrats have potential to flip Wisconsin. I think actually Wisconsin's probably the safest Rust Belt state for Democrats. I'm probably going to tilt it for the Democrats here. And I believe that should do it for these states. Let me just take a quick look up here. Yeah. So, current prediction, I do see Democrats retaking control of the House. Not sure if I'm fairly comfortable with this margin, 219 to 216. I believe the current House looks something like 215 to 220. And usually the party out of power gains about 5 seats. So maybe this is what it'll look like. I'm not sure. It's possible that this House race could look fairly different in just a month, 2 months, a year, obviously. So we'll have to see what this looks like. But for now, I have the Democrats regaining control of the House, 219 to 216. It's a fairly close race. So anything can happen, but I think more than likely Democrats regain control, just given how the party out of power tends to do when seeking re-election in the House. As I said before, the Senate races and the gubernatorial races are very different. I'll probably cover those in another video, but those are looking a lot better for Republicans. So the House race, I think, is probably the safest bet for Democrats here, probably the one race they can count on to kind of break the Republican triumvirate in the House, in the Senate, and obviously in the White House. So we'll see what happens. We've still got plenty of time to change this prediction. Maybe Republicans will keep control of the House. We shall see. So that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it was a lot less controversial than my last one. Still appreciate the views, though. That's very nice. Never intended for, close to 300 people to watch this stuff. This is just kind of a hobby of mine, so I do appreciate it if you agree or disagree with my political views. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you disagree or not with this prediction. It's a fairly slim margin. I think I've seen a lot of people predicting the Democrats win by 223. Not sure how I feel about that, but we'll see. So hope you guys enjoyed. That's going to do it for me today. You guys have a good day.